Buongiorno, le presentazioni si susseguono a ritmo molto serrato qui a Cremona Musica. Adesso è il turno di un ospite illustre, Eric Schoens, che presenta il suo libro, che è un libro davvero speciale, particolare, di cui adesso ci parlerà, edito dalla casa editrice Schott, quindi una casa editrice molto importante. Il tema di questo libro ha a che fare con un'altra dimensione rispetto a quella esclusivamente performativa del musicista. Siamo molto concentrati sugli aspetti tecnici spesso dell'esecuzione, ma dimentichiamo di trattare l'uomo musicista nella sua interezza, quindi non solamente da un punto di vista performativo, ma anche da un punto di vista della globalità della propria formazione, che ha a che fare quindi non solo con gli interessi intellettuali, ma anche con uno spirito, con un'anima. E infatti questo libro parla di illuminazione, di zen, è qualcosa che ci appassiona, e presto sentiremo dalle parole del nostro ospite qual è il taglio che ha dato al volume. Il volume è stato edito prima in inglese e adesso è uscita una versione tedesca. Immaginiamo ci saranno in preparazione anche edizioni in altre lingue presto. La parola quindi al nostro ospite, che ci illustrerà i contenuti del suo libro. Buongiorno.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Is it okay with the sound? I'm sorry, my Italian isn't so great, so I trust you did said the right things. But I'm very honored to be here. And also a special welcome to Mr. Thomas Schröder from Schott. Is now my German publisher, and I'm very honored by that. It was in 2017 I presented the first edition of my book here. I wrote it in English, and the title is a bit strange, perhaps. Walking Up the Mountain Track. The subtitle is The Zen Way to Enlightened Musicianship. Walking Up the Mountain Track is the first sentence of the absolutely favorite book of Glenn Gould. He was obsessed by this book by Soseki, and it's a key element in the book. So that's why I chose this title. Now for the German edition, we chose this cannot be translated into German, so we came up with Die Wege der Meister, because the book is very much about learning from the masters, learning from 4 centuries of music, of the great minds of Western classical music have given us. Not only in the great recordings you find on YouTube by Rachmaninoff and Lipatti and Glenn Gould and all the greats from the history, but also not too many people know what they wrote about how to perform, how to study, how to practice, how to sit at the piano. All these things you can also learn from these masters, and this is a really valuable, and there's no end to this learning. And it cost me almost 25 years, together with my wife, to gather all these quotations. There are more than 350 in the second part of the book. Let me give you a little. And I would like to say also, I am chief editor of a magazine on piano. This is our latest German edition. It's published in all German-speaking countries, and we also have a Dutch edition. I'm Dutch. Which is published in Holland and Belgium. And twice a year we do a special magazine on the piano competitions. I think it's the only one in the world, especially devoted to this. And we are now preparing our 10th edition, and it's a great joy to make these magazines. Okay, but back to the book. And this morning there was a panel discussion here, and I took away from that in terms of education, it's not really about raising great virtuosos. It's much more about raising people with a personality, with not just focused on piano or violin playing, but people who are well educated, and of course that is important, because if you have an interesting personality, your music making is bound to be more interesting than when you only focus on the gymnastics of piano or piano playing. So that is very important what I got there, and that is also a very important element in my work. Let me give you a little overview of what is in the book. The book is in 3 parts. The first part is written in the form of dialogues between a young musician from Vienna. His name is called Benjamin. My oldest son is called Benjamin, and in fact, I have 2 sons, both in the arts, and they both did one of the covers, the paintings, so that's very nice too. I was very happy that Schott gave me the freedom to design the cover myself. But back to the book. This young man from Vienna, he had heard the recordings of Lipatti, and he wants to play like Lipatti, but he has no clue how to get there. And then he travels to Japan and has these conversations with a Zen master, and they discuss various subjects about how to practice, what music is all about, how to deal with your ego, how to serve the composer, how to treat the score, how do you do that, how do you subjects also like the will and ambition and patience is a very important thing, and that is something we were talking about this morning also with Christopher Axworthy. I was talking about young people, and I remembered an interview I had with Jacques Rouvier, the great piano pedagogue, and he told me, well, young people nowadays, they come into the conservatory, and their first question almost is, where do I go? What are the best competitions? What is the shortcut to fame and glory and and the career like people like Lang Lang may have? And that is so contrary to the way these old masters worked. Like Lipatti, Lipatti never asked about the fee he was getting for a recital. So in the first part of the book, there is also lots of information about Zen, what we can learn from the ancient philosophy from the East, very much in connection to ego and personality. But there are also these dialogues from Benjamin with the Zen master are interspersed with scenes from the lives of great musicians like Dino Lipatti, Glenn Gould, Sergio Celibidache, who was a Zen Buddhist himself, Claudio Arau, who was talking about Zen all the time with his students, Michelangelo, of course, Woody Menuhin, Arthur Rubinstein, Hoffman. We can learn so much from these great minds, and they are really perfect examples for young musicians now. But they lived in another time, and there was not the stress we have now. Everything has to go so fast, and when you really want to develop music, and you really want to learn and want to get to a higher level of interpretation, then you need time and you need patience. It's a very important thing. That's a little bit the first part. Then the second part is a collection of more than 350 quotations I took from 400 years of music history, and I put them in context, all these quotations, on various subjects such as technique, how to work, how to sit at the piano. That's also connected to Zazen in Zen. Economy of music is economy of movement is very important. And then, of course, interpretation. How do you treat the score? How do you... So much to learn from Czesu Chelbidaka, for example, that he said there is no interpretation. You just look at the score, and that you, when all the conditions are right, then music can manifest itself. But so the way there is something very important, and the way that is something also a Zen thought. It's about the process. It's about lots of musicians have said, like Menuhin and also Christa Ludwig have said, it's more important to the way there is more important than the result. Don't be focused on the end result, but your focus should be on the way, on your own development, on learning and making yourself better and better. Not with the objective to make yourself better and better, but just do your job. That's what the Zen masters say, and be patient. And for instance, in the famous book Zen in the Art of Archery, which Claudio Arrau advised all his students to read, the book by Herrigel, the German professor who went to Japan to study archery. It's written about the same time when Lipatti was writing his letter. I will come back to that later. And this book is so interesting, and it's such a example, example for so many musicians, as Claudio Arrau advised everybody to read. He was there 4 years practicing archery, with the bow and the arrow, and you shoot, and the goal is at the end of the hall. And then the Zen masters, with their eyes closed, they can hit the bullseye. And but this Professor Herrigel, he was also impatient, so he had to practice. He was there 4 years. He had to practice 3 years of that on the makiwara, it's called. It's a bundle of straw that's put 2 meters in front of you. And so there's nothing romantic about shooting an arrow over 40 miles away, so to speak. No, it's just about getting the technique right, getting all the movements, all the positions. It's very meticulously worked out. And then in the end, he finally succeeded in shooting the arrow the way it should be, and the master was said, now it has shot. It's not you, but it. And Herrigel was going, now I succeeded. And the master said, oh, be quiet, just continue doing your work. That is, I think we can learn a lot from this mental attitude people like that have, especially young people going from one competition to another and being very disappointed when they don't get the first prize. It shouldn't be about that. It's about music making. Some element is very important. I just mentioned Lipatti. Of course, everybody knows the great recordings of Dino Lipatti. He died tragically, 33 years of leukemia. And he was in very bad health for at least the last 4 years of his life. But nobody worked like him. When he was doing a recording, he was never satisfied, and he was always Walter Legge, the husband of Elisabeth Schwarzkopf. He was his record producer, and he said, well, it's fine now. No, said Lipatti, no, let's continue. It must be better. The same situation with Sergei Rachmaninov and what's his name, Fritz Kreisler. they made these wonderful recordings together, and Kreisler was always, after the first take, he said, "Well, now, wonderful," but not Rachmaninoff. He was never satisfied, and Rachmaninoff said with his dry humor, "Fritz is like a flea; you can't put your finger on him." But this still is one of the they did the Beethoven sonata and Schubert duo and Grieg second sonata, I think. These are moments in phonographic history that will never be forgotten, and it's you can learn so much from that also. But I'm drifting away from my subject a little bit. The letter of Lipatti. That is something very important. I quoted in the beginning of the book because that is a document. It's only half-page text, and he describes exactly how he worked from the first moment when he saw the score, all these little mysterious signs on the paper, until he was at the concert and playing as if he was improvising, and the music just manifested itself so naturally. This is unbelievable, and it may seem also spontaneous and so, but he worked very, very hard on that, and he had a strict rule about it. So let me tell you, there was in 3 phases he did that. The first phase was to read the score away from your instrument, because my book seems to be only because I try to be a little pianist myself, but so I am focused a little bit on piano, but these things can be applied for any instrumentalist. But so the first thing must be that you have an exact image of what it should sound like, what as Lipatti says, how the most perfect interpreter would play it. Like a painter, when you put the first brush on the canvas, you already know how it should be done. And then the second phase, and that is something many pedagogues nowadays forget about. Then he said, then you should practice the technical aspects of your art without injecting any sentiment, Lipatti says. And so many pedagogues nowadays, also very famous pianists, they said you should never separate the technique from the musical content. And that is a big mistake, because Lipatti didn't work like that. Joseph Hoffmann, the great pianist, Rachmaninoff dedicated his 3rd piano concerto to Joseph Hoffmann, says exactly the same. Rachmaninoff, who studied so slowly that people who were playing the pieces he was working on, they couldn't recognize what he was doing. That's what I like about this book also, that you have so many human, interesting anecdotes and stories, but they have a big truth inside. But so you practice like a machine. You just the piano is a very mechanical instrument. You just go, the keys go down, and then you go to the next one, and then but like connecting the dots. But then comes the 3rd phase, and then the artist, as Lipatti says, the artist full of life, who has discovered the deep meaning of music in the 1st phase, he is joined by the craftsman, the technical craftsman, and then the artist finds a bigger possibility of interpretation, because the technique is not something to think about anymore. The technique is so well prepared that you are perfectly free to think about music, only about music, and there are no thoughts in your mind from like when you play the Schumann Fantasia, and then you get this terrible episode with these jumps, and it's so different. Even Horowitz made some mistakes there. There's nothing in your mind. You don't need to worry, because all these things are conquered in practicing, and that is something very, very wise, I think. And then the book was finished. I had these conversations with Benjamin, the young musician, and his Zen master, and I also had all these quotes where a lot of the book is based on what we learn from the masters. That's why the German title is Die Wege der Meister. So, but then my wife is a big fan of Jonas Kaufmann, the tenor. And we were in Luxembourg in the Philharmonie. And, I'm not somebody who wants to have an autograph all the time of these great people. It doesn't interest me. But I wanted to say hi and thank him for the concert. And we were standing in line with all these fans. And all of a sudden, I realized, he said somewhere something about archery also, Kaufmann. He said the Zen, we can learn something from the Zen masters, from the way they practice their art. And then all of a sudden, I realized that until then, the book was only about dead people. People who are no longer with us, the great minds of Western classical music. Most of them died, even Stravinsky. And I thought I must ask him for an interview, because Zen is something really so alive and so powerful and so important for musicians of today. So, I proposed this to him, and he said, "Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I know about Zen and these archers, and very interesting." I said, "Contact my agent, and we will arrange an interview." But Jonas Kaufmann is a superstar, and everybody wants him. So it was very easy for him to say yes, but it was even easier for his agent to say no, because they have to protect him. He couldn't accept all the invitations. So that was that. He wouldn't cooperate. But then Christa Ludwig came to Holland for a masterclass in the conservatory in The Hague. And I went there. I was in contact with the organizers, and so I sent the manuscript. And you must know, Christa Ludwig is all about Zen. She has this idea that in the ideal situation, she is performing, but she is not. She had the feeling that it was not her doing it. She had the feeling that she was not singing herself. It was singing, like Herriegel with archery, and she called it Das Geheimnis, the secret. She was always talking about Das Geheimnis. So I proposed this to Christa Ludwig, and she said, please come over, and we could talk, and we had the most wonderful talk with her in her hotel after these master classes, and she told all these wonderful stories. She was the favorite singer of Leonard Bernstein, of von Karajan, of Karl Böhm, of Klemperer, or all these great conductors she worked with. And she told me some stories I could not repeat her here, but it's a wonderful. And she was already in her 80s, I think, when we met, and this incredible woman. Every year with her birthday and with Christmas, I sent her a message, and you won't believe. In half an hour, I always got a reply from her. So there was a very friendly connection with her, and very much to the core of the book, about when you come to this point that you that you have the feeling that you are not doing it yourself, but you are just in service of music, and you are just like a medium, a link between the composer and the music and the listeners. So then I did some more interviews. Maria João Pires was also very, very important for me, because she lives this Zen idea herself. She's on and off the stage. She is the same person, and she was a great influence on me. But also Alfred Brendel, who tends to be a little skeptical, but I loved speaking to him. Also Janine Jansen, Sascha Gavriliuk, Roberto Poseda, who organizes this whole thing here, Janine Jansen, Daniele Gatti, some really great artists. And I wanted to ask Joyce Di Donato, the famous singer, for an interview, and she said, well, I can give you an interview, but you would look at this speech I gave for the students of Juilliard. And that's something I can really recommend, because there she gave such great advice to young students about so many aspects of performing, and also for her it wasn't easy, because she was the only student when she was graduated. We didn't have an agent, so when you think of these young kids being disappointed when they don't get the first prize right away, listen to what Joyce Di Donato had to say. She had to do without it. She wasn't good enough for having an agent. Think about George Bollett, one of the super pianists of his time. And you must know he had his debut in Carnegie Hall when he was young, with all the greats, Toscanini, Horowitz, perhaps not Horowitz, he wants to say. No, Horowitz, all these great artists they were in the audience, and he still didn't have a career. It took a long, long time before, after 1973, he got this big concert in Carnegie Hall, which was a tremendous success, and then he had his career. In the meantime, he had to survive as a conductor of operettas and a photographer and things like that. And I'm sure he didn't think about his ego so much either. What else? For the German edition, now after 6 years, I could expand it a little. So I also did an interview with Andras Schiff. I had already done for my piano magazine, because he is also, his wife is Japanese, and he knows a lot about Zen, and so I included that interview also. And I also did an extra interview with Leif Ove Ansnes, the great Norwegian pianist, who was coached by my dear old teacher, Jacques de Thiège from Antwerp, from whom I learned everything. And but Jacques was never keen on being in the spotlight. He never wanted to give master classes, but he was the absolutely. Leif Ove once said he was the only person I encountered in my whole career whom I would call a genius. So that says something. So that is, I lost my thread, what I was going to say. But yeah, and then it gave me the chance to, with Leif Ove, to speak a little bit about Jacques, because it is through this professor, through Jacques de Thiège, that I got this idea about Zen and music making. Well, I think that is that's it, basically what's in the book. And there are not so many people here, but out there on the Facebook you are probably listening with millions, and but it's not so easy for you to ask some questions. But perhaps here some of the friendly people who are here have something to ask. I don't know. Or was it all so clear what I said that you... I must put on my glasses so I can see you, at least. Well, there's no need, of course. Very clear. Oh, yeah, very clear. My Finnish friend here is saying it's very clear. Yeah. Well, it's a big... of course, it's a big question mark. There are so many things to be discovered, and it's I can't stress enough. It's a process. It's not. If you do this, then you do this, and then you are suddenly a great musician. No, it's very individual also, and you have to work. I just did an interview with what's his name? Frost, the clarinet player, and he is a phenomenal artist. But he stressed on, well, you have to keep on working and studying, and because that is, and he said it very beautifully, that is the way you become yourself. I couldn't have thought of that, but that is you have to. This is another important point, that when you listen to Sergio Celibidache saying there is no interpretation, well, there is, of course, but I also interviewed Daniele Gatti for this book, and Gatti said, as soon as I put one foot on the podium, then there is already interpretation. But it is the question is, how do you approach the music? Do you look at the score and try to analyze and look what is there and what needs to be done to make the music manifest itself? Or do you have this approach that what is there in the score I can highlight a little bit, and then I can show myself more, and I can put myself apart from my colleagues. I can do this little detail in a way that I will be noticed. That's the wrong approach. You just have to go with what the music says you, and then you interpret it with your own voice and your own life, and that is the valuable thing, where the artist and the composer go together. That's completely different from trying to impress with some tricks or whatever. That was, I think, very important to add still. I only see happy faces here before me, so I think it's... thank you so much for your attention. Okay.